The Motor Dream podcast is recorded on Wallamedigal land of the Eora Nation. It always was and always will be the lands of the First Nations of Australia.
This is the Motor Dream podcast.
A merry belated Christmas, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Motor Dream podcast. I'm Connor McNally, and I hope that Santa was good to you with lots of goodies, as well as enjoying plenty of good food. Of course, this is the podcast where my guests can dream a little about what they like to have in their dream garage, if money was no issue. Speaking of which, I wonder what kind of dream garage Santa would have. We might have to ask him this time next year. 8 episodes in, and the journey of finding out what kind of dream garage my guests would have keeps rolling along. If you enjoyed all the episodes thus far, thank you for sticking around. And if you're new, welcome aboard, and make sure you hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcasts. And make sure you trawl through all the previous episodes that are readily available right now. If you're a newbie to the podcast, here's how it works. I tell my guests that one day they wake up and check their phones and discover that they receive a text to say that they need to check their bank balance. They open up their bank app and suddenly discover that their balance has gone to infinity. They are billionaires. As soon as they discover their newfound fortune, they get an email from this mystery benefactor that tells them that they can spend anything that they like and buy any car or bike or machine that they want. There is a catch though. They are only allowed 3 cars, bikes and machines in their dream garage. It sounds easy, doesn't it? But as my guests have previously discovered, it is very, very hard, and it makes for some quite interesting listening, I can assure you. You get to hear from drivers and riders from within the motorsport game, as well as those who work in the motoring industry, and on the odd occasion you'll hear from some prominent personalities who all share the same passion for cars, bikes, or machines, as well as motoring. Now in this episode, I get to chat with one of Australia's most prominent female road cyclists who has since discovered a second career in motorsport since retiring from the pro peloton at the end of 2015. Discovering her love for all things speed related at the tender age of 3 in BMX, Rochelle Gilmore would quickly dedicate her passion for all things cycling into a professional career that would see her established in Europe with many of the world's best riders. Initially starting out in the track discipline, she would gravitate towards road cycling, where her skills as a sprinter would be utilised to great effect for the teams that she rode for, most notably the Lotto Honda team and her own team that she started from scratch, the Wiggle Honda team. Stage wins in the Route de France and the Women's Giro d'Italia was some of her career highlights, but the biggest win of her career was winning a gold medal in the women's road race at the 2010 Commonwealth Games in Delhi. Since retiring from cycling, Gilmore has turned her competitiveness towards business in sports talent management as an expert journalist and commentator, and in recent times reconnecting with the other true passion for motorsport, which has developed from her younger years growing up in Sydney Sutherland Shire with her older brothers who were madly obsessed with tinkering with Holden Commodores. Through her association with her stepfather, David Dicker, one of Australasia's most prominent businessmen in the information technology sector, as well as being the owner of the New Zealand-based road and cars business, Gilmore has applied all her competitive craft to the Ferrari Challenge Asia and more recently in Targa Tasmania. Her love of motorsport extends to her sports management, where she manages Australian up-and-coming open-wheeler star Costa de Paris, who is currently cutting his teeth in the highly competitive GB3 Championship. And not one to do things by halves, her competitiveness has extended to attempting to climb Mount Everest, which she successfully conquered recently. I caught up with Rochelle shortly after her accomplishment of reaching the summit of Everest from her home base in Dubai, and her enthusiasm for her passion for cars was infectious. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my chat with the incredibly talented Rochelle Gilmore. Rochelle Gilmore, welcome to the Motor Dream podcast. Great to have you on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I love cars. I love motorsports, so it's a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. But your background initially was in cycling, road cycling. That's where a lot of people will remember you. You're a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. You were a regular in the peloton, in the pro peloton for many, many years. And only recently, you retired a few years ago. You've now delved into cars, and you've also delved into conquering Mount Everest. I want to congratulate you firstly on conquering Mount Everest, reaching the summit. That must have been a surreal experience.
Yes, it's one that I set out to do that I didn't expect to achieve, and I wasn't too worried about that. I just wanted to have a go and, challenge my body and my mind. I think climbing Everest is more about the mental strength.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was a great experience, and to stand on top of the highest peak in the world and to just see the beautiful views. It was quite an amazing experience, and I did exceed my expectations, but it's only really just sinking in.
You've got a big smile on your face because I could tell how much of an effort you put in. And I actually, during my research of learning who you were, I watched some of the videos of your training, and I remember one of the first days you started your training to get yourself physically and mentally fit was you were going up a number of flights of stairs. And at one point, you did give a content warning saying, "I'm about to puke." And you did. You actually puked on camera because you wanted to show everyone how much of a challenge it actually was. And you managed to conquer Mount Everest, through all the adversity that you had to go through. Like, you had to go through injury. You lost a close friend whilst you were training as well, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But you just pushed yourself through it, and you got there.
Yeah, I think once I decide to do something, I do it 100%. And with the training, I always have this, people say it's a little bit negative, but I have this favorite saying that if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
Absolutely.
So I'd often train harder than I either race or with the challenge of Everest from Camp 4 to the summit on both of the climbs that I did. Found it relatively smooth and easy. There was a lot of complications before that with the rotations and oxygen levels and stuff, but I certainly did have myself in physical condition to climb Everest. So I often do push myself in training beyond limits because you don't fear failure in training. You just go as hard as you possibly can. And so I think that's one real key thing for many top athletes is to prepare, make sure you're prepared. And it's hard when you don't have other competitors to compare yourself to, but you can only go as hard as you can go.
Absolutely. I want to touch on your cycling career. As I said, Commonwealth Games gold medalist, part of the pro peloton for many, many years. So you were firmly ensconced in Europe for a long period of time. Got to race with some fantastic legends of the sport and some that are still competing, including a fellow Aussie in Tiffany Cromwell, who's very much well known these days to most motorsport fans as the partner of Valtteri Bottas. Where did that love of cycling begin? Because reading up on your biography, it all started with BMX. That's where it started.
Yeah, and it did start at the age of 3. It was in the under 5 boys. My brothers were racing, and I was tagging along to the races, and I was saying to my mum and dad, I really want to race. So, I remember at 3-4 years old in the under 5-year boys, you have the little block under your pedal to start and you got someone holding you, and my dad had to push me up the jumps because I wasn't strong enough to get up over the jumps. And that's when my passion really started because I just loved pedaling. I loved racing. BMX is where it started. And for a very long time, I did all other sports, at school, and also on the weekends, I added in surf lifesaving and tennis and things like that. I did little athletics and all the different sports, but BMX was always my first choice.
Yeah.
And then what happened, I was at Bulli High School, and they asked if we wanted to take a couple of lessons off and go and do some kind of fitness testing.
Yeah.
With a talent ID program that travels around to the public schools. And I'm like, yeah, I'm up for that. And I made it through all of the rounds that year. I think I was around 13. And I was offered a scholarship to the Institute of Sport, fully funded as a potential Olympic athlete. The thing was, BMX was not an Olympic sport at the time. So I received this letter in the mail saying, I had an opportunity to work with the AIS in the following sports, which were rowing, triathlon, and cycling. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, at that point, I didn't really know what cycling was, but I knew that you pedaled. So I'd only been on a BMX bike, but I thought, I'll give cycling a go. So I rang the corresponding number and 2 days later, a guy came out and gave me a road bike and all the gear and explained everything to me, why you don't wear underpants under your shorts and, all this kind of thing. And he left everything with me. And before he could even drive up the road, I was already putting everything on and getting out there. And it just felt so strange being on this flat road on a road bike after riding BMX my whole life. I was on this really big bike. So I went to my first race that weekend to watch, but I ended up talking the coach into letting me start. I think I came second, but within 3 months I'd won Australian national titles. So
just incredible. That's was it an easy transition from BMX to road cycling? Obviously, the disciplines are quite a different aspect. Like BMX, they're short and sharp races over in 50 seconds, whereas road cycling, like 5 hours at most. They're long races.
I remember the first race that I did that weekend, and it was straight out a country road in Bathurst or Dubbo or somewhere out in the country.
Yeah.
And the race would have been probably at that age about 13 kilometers. So you would go out around a witch's hat and back.
Yep.
And I remember a point thinking, is this actually a race? And where is everybody? Because I was by myself. And I think the biggest adaptation, the biggest change is definitely the distance, the time. I ended up very quickly getting into track cycling, which was more my style of racing. I think within 2 or 3 months, I was racing on the velodrome, where you do get the elbows out and, it's close racing and it's a bit more technical. So, the road racing for me, the passion came a little bit later, I think around 2005. So I started pretty seriously in 97 on both the road and track, and enjoyed both of them. But I think by 2005, I decided that riding circles inside a velodrome for 3 hours in the morning and then 4 hours in the afternoon wasn't really that healthy, and I wanted to be outdoors, and I switched then over to road cycling permanently.
Road cycling is obviously a different discipline. What do you have to do to prepare yourself for like 5 to 6 hours of racing? Because you're riding in a huge pack, of fellow cyclists, that have obviously got the end goal, but they've got their strengths and weaknesses in different parts. What were your strengths and weaknesses, and how did you play your mind games against the rest of the peloton, knowing that the end goal was to eventually win the race, or at least play your part in a teammate to win a race?
Yeah, we didn't do too often because right from the start I was designated sprinter for the road. So basically the idea is with women's racing back then, we only raced 3.5, 4 hours, which was more practical back then without big salaries and having a fully professional sport. I think that was quite adequate. And my job was to have the rest of the team protect me and get me to the last 200 meters without exerting any energy. So basically being protected by my teammates. And my job was the last 200 meters to produce as much power for as long as possible as a road sprinter. So when I tell people, I'm not a climber, I'm a sprinter, they're like, oh, but you raced 150 Ks. And I'm like, yeah, but you're protected for that, most of that. It's kind of just getting to the finish and having as much power as possible for the last 200 meters.
And it all paid off in 2010 when you actually won the Commonwealth Games, the road race. And obviously all that experience that you had racing as a sprinter came to good effect winning on the streets of Delhi. How was that? Like that must have been like a real nice cherry on top of the cake, for you at that point in time of your career.
Yeah, for me especially, it was, I can still feel the emotions of winning that race. And it's because in 2002 in Manchester, I ran second working with a teammate who won, and then on the track in the velodrome, and then 4 years later in Melbourne, second again. And then 4 years later when I went to Delhi, in the team meeting, I was to be the lead out rider. And I said, look, I've done two Commonwealth Games. I have 2 silver medals. I'm not here to take home another silver medal. So we changed the plan. And once that plan was put in place, there was no way I was going home with a silver medal again. So, over that period of time, to have 4 years training for Melbourne, 4 years training for Manchester, 4 years training for Delhi, it was time for me to just give it everything. So when I crossed the line first, it was a real moment of satisfaction.
You retired in 2015, and now the sport has really progressed in the 8 years since you've retired. We've now got a women's La Vuelta, we've now got a women's Giro, and of course the creme of the creme is the Tour de France Farm especially. Do you feel like you maybe retired a little too early, or are you happy that you retired when you did, and you can see the fruits of all the work that you and fellow riders that have been in the pro peloton pushing to have these major events, come to fruition? You can watch from the sidelines and be proud of what you did or what you contributed.
Yeah, I am very satisfied with the timing of my retirement. I'm still on the board of the UCI Commission, which means I still have a lot of input into trying to get these events onto the calendar. That's one of our main priorities. However, in 2012 is actually when I really did decide to retire and start my own women's cycling team. The timing was right because in women's cycling, the UK just went crazy over the women's road racing and track racing. So it was a good time to tackle some good sponsors that were really involved and had seen the races, and they were a huge success. So I think the timing was really right for me to move on. And I say that because I was second twice at the World Championships. They should have been wins.
Yeah.
The riders who won later went positive, and they were Russian or Ukrainian or something. And for me, it was all about not having raced at the Olympic Games. And that's really hard for a road sprinter because you have to wait every 8 years to find out if the course is going to be flat for a sprinter or hilly for a climber. And for me, it could have been another 12, 16 years before we saw a flat road race for me to really have a go. And it's only one day in every 4 years. You could be sick, you could be injured. So that was missing from my palmares. But I really did think it was the right time for me to move into business, and I've been very successful with that. So
you've done
I think the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've done very, very well. Like, you managed a team. You even got support from Honda, and Honda have been, tremendous support for you over the years. Obviously, you're no longer managing the Wiggle Honda team, but you've gone on to be a manager, a talent manager, and this is where the interest of cars comes into play, because you've kind of grown up with cars as well in later years, and you also manage Costa Paris, who's racing in the GP3 Championship, which born out of British Formula 4. And Costa's doing a really good job racing in Europe right now against some of Britain's best talent, and you're managing him, and you've got to be very proud of what he's done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be prouder of any other athlete I've ever worked with, and I've signed over 100 athletes in my career as manager.
Yep.
But Costa Paris is something really, really special. We haven't seen it yet in GB3. It will come, but he is actually the epitome of an athlete, only just 16 years of age. And I've worked out that I really get more pleasure out of working with younger talent and riders who are already, or drivers or artists who are already established, that switch from one manager to another. I like to work with a young talent that can make sure that their careers are on track right from the start. I do have a little story about Costa, but in regards to my motorsport interest, I had 2 older brothers, and they're just motorheads. They are just crazy about cars. So my first experience was they put me on a very steep, wet grass hill and tried to teach me to do handbrake starts. So
how old were you when that happened?
Oh, I would have been about 8 years, 9 years old, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
And then we progressed to go up to the local tip, the depot, and learn how to do handbrake slides and burnouts and stuff like that. So, we had that kind of great childhood. But yeah, my brothers were just working on their cars 24/7. And even now, my brother has a young child. So he's 13 years old, but he already owns a few cars and he's working on them all the time.
So it hasn't
So
really
yeah,
escaped you, has it? Being around
no,
cars. That's really cool.
yeah,
By the way, I should mention that you grew up in the Sutherland Shire. I'm from Bankstown, so we kind of have the similar I guess upbringing. I kind of learned around the back street, like near the industrial estates of Bankstown. You obviously did like around the Sutherland Shire and the like. So like I think we were just at the right time where we can sort of get away. Getting
yeah,
around, and obviously these days it's very difficult to try and drive around the back roads
yeah.
without getting caught. But I think at the time, I don't condone it, but I think we were just lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now it's just not even an option or a possibility unless you have a private property. But back in those days, the police would just come along and say, "Hey, go home, kids."
Exactly.
As long as we stay off the roads and out of danger. But yeah, it was a great childhood. But everything revolved around cars and motorbikes back with my brothers.
Did you watch motorsport as well on TV with your brothers, or were you just more interested racing BMX and you just let your brothers do your thing at the time?
None of us really watched TV as children. We're outdoor kids, and we'd rather be driving or working on cars and building things rather than sitting inside. We couldn't sit still, so we didn't watch a lot of TV.
Okay, that's cool. We'll go back now to what you do these days with Costa. Tell us how you first met Costa, because his father, Con, used to race Formula Ford, and I've remembered the Tamaris name for many years. Obviously, Costa's cousin Tom races in the British Superbike Championship. He's done very well with that. And, of course, Costa's doing quite well at the moment in GP3. So how did you first meet the Tamaris family?
Okay, so Con Tamaris, 20 years ago, he invited me down to his local bike shop, which is also a really big, nice cafe, the Greengrocer in Goulburn, to do a promotion for Pinarello, which was one of my sponsors, the bike that I rode. And he wanted to get a group of women together, and he wanted me to inspire women to get into cycling. So I did a roller display on how to ride the rollers and taught a few girls how to ride them and just tried to inspire them to take that step from bunch riding from the Greengrocer to joining a club and start club racing. So that's the first time that I met Con Tamaris, which is Costa's father. And I would go maybe twice a year down to see Con and have a look at his bike stock and talk to him about bikes. And we'd always end up talking about Costa. Sometimes Costa was in the shop helping out. And we'd always just be looking at his go-karts that are hanging on the wall in there and what results he'd had. And, he'd been to the World Championships and he'd won several national championships. And me being, brought up in a family of motorsports, I'd go straight home and tell my brothers and show them all the photos of the go-karts. So Con became a very close friend, and my brother's nephew was going through a hard time at the age of 11, 12, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now. So when I was having a chat with him, we were out on the boat, we were just sitting there. I said, "Look, what do you want to do with your life?" And he said, "I want to be a Formula One driver." I said, "Well, look, it's kind of too late. You're very, very tall. You're very heavy. You've not raced go-karts. You may have missed the boat." And he said, "But nobody takes me seriously. That's what I say I want to be. That's what I want to do." And I said, "Look, if you're willing to sell one of your motorbikes to put the money towards a go-kart, I'll take you out to Eastern Creek and we'll buy a go-kart and we'll get you into a training session." So the next day, he said he sold his bike. He had $6,000. He wanted the best go-kart, so it would be another $6,000. And I said, "Okay, I'll come and pick you up." I took him out to Eastern Creek, and we're looking at these go-karts in the shop there. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to call my friend Con, and I'm going to ask him his advice. And Con said to me, "Where are you?" And I said, I'm at Eastern Creek. And he said, oh, Costa's having his first race today at Eastern Creek. So come over. And we went from the shop over to the track, and Costa was turning 15 that day. He was racing in AGI car. I think it was an F4 actually. And he broke some track records that day in the F4. And he really impressed me with the way that he handled himself and the way that he introduced himself to my nephew and spent time talking to him about the go-karts. And I thought, this is a very mature 15-year-old lad here that's just broken records the first time he's ever driven a car. So obviously a lot of talent. I'd heard a lot over the years from his father. And right there and then I said to him, look, Costa, I think I can create a pathway for you in the UK to start with. And I'd like to manage you from here on. So a kid that's won every single thing he's done in go-karts has jumped in a car, broken track records in his first time on the track. Super, super impressive. Grounded young man, holds a conversation like a 30-year-old man. He knows what he's talking about. He's interested in his car. He has a lot of input into, let's change this, let's change that. And he was only 15. So I thought, look, this is a kid that I'd really like to take on. So we shook hands there and then, and I became his manager agent, and I've been looking after him since then. He and his dad went over for the first testing, which he had actually passed, and they were very, very, very impressed with his driving. So Carlin, it was Carlin at the time, they signed him up. It's recently become Roden Carlin. But yeah, he actually first before that went over to New Zealand and drove an F3, and he broke track records there as well. So that was quite impressive. And then he went to the UK and really impressed Team Carlin over there, who have had the likes of Lewis Hamilton and big drivers come through their program. So really happy that he's got a stable, good team in the UK. And then, as you know, a couple of months ago, his father passed away, which was devastating to all of us. Con was probably one of my closest friends, especially during the past couple of years, speaking to him every single day. So it's really something missing in my heart and something I feel every day. But yeah, he was going out for a ride, and he got cleaned up by a motorist. So he died at the scene. Yeah, devastating story. And Costa was in the UK still asleep. So his mother and I decided that we wouldn't wake him up because it would be a tough day anyway. When he woke up, his mum explained to him what had happened. But by then we'd already booked the flights. I'd already booked the flights for them to come home. So once he woke up, it was pretty quick to the airport and back to Australia to be with family. But Costa, being a racer, he wanted to go back and race even before the funeral. So he flew back to the UK and raced, and then back to Australia for the funeral. And to be honest, I think his last race last weekend is when it really hit him. That's the last time he saw his dad at that track in Belgium, in Spa. And I couldn't be there. And it was a really, really tough time for him. So I think he's only just starting to go through the grieving process now. So we need to manage that at the moment and just treat him as a person rather than a racing car driver.
It must be very hard for him at the moment, having to deal with all this, trying to manage a career, trying to be the best athlete that he can be and deal with the loss of his father, which would be a lot to deal with for a 16-year-old right now.
Yeah, and his father was his coach and his mentor, and his father was at every single race he ever went to in go-karts and in cars. So he's not only lost a father, he's lost his coach and his mentor, and what comes with that is a lot of confidence as well. So it's an extremely tough time. He's got really, really good support from his team. Trevor and Stephanie Carlin are looking after him quite well and understand that he needs to go through the grieving process. And yeah, he has another race this weekend. So I had advised him to maybe take a couple of races off and just but racing's his thing and his distraction and his training. So we'll see how he gets through it.
Were you aware of what Con was doing before you met him through your bike interest? Were you aware that he was racing Formula Ford back in the 90s against the likes of Craig Lowndes, Stephen Richards, Jason
He
Bright?
never mentioned it.
Really?
He never mentioned it. And actually, we had Costa doing some testing in New Zealand, and we're in the car one day, and I was looking at some photos on his phone, and a photo came up of him in some racing kit. Con's very reserved when it comes to things like that. He's not going to brag about when I was racing. I never ever heard Con say when I was racing.
Wow.
So I knew him for over 20 years, very, very closely, and never spoke about his own racing career.
I'm staggered by that, because he was a very competent driver back in his day. Probably could have made it, like in, say, supercars or GT racing. He actually was a very, very good driver. It's just a shame that he kind of dropped off the radar by the end of the 90s. But what we gained out of that was his son's now racing and doing great things in Europe, and we've got to be very proud of that and thankful, for the legacy that he's left behind, as sad as the circumstances were of how we've lost him. I want to.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a bold statement here.
By all means.
I believe Costa Tsaparas will make Formula One. I believe that with all my heart. And I don't know too much about the racing scene, but what I do know is an athlete who is the full package. Obviously, now he needs to deal with the grief and the loss of his father, but he's such a mature young child that he will get through that. He's an all-round talent. He's the complete package. So I believe in him 100%. I really look forward to the day that he lines up in Formula One.
You've lined up on the grid yourself in your own way. You've actually made a bit of a career racing cars as well. Like, since you retired from racing road bikes, it came through a very unique set of circumstances, didn't it? Because your father, or was it your stepfather or your father that started racing?
Stepfather. He's my stepfather. Sometimes I call him my father.
Yeah.
Since I was 13 years old, he's been my role model and my mentor, my business advisor, and sometimes just a good friend. So we have a pretty close relationship. So he was the father figure in the most influential parts of and years of my life. So sometimes I'll call him Dad. Sometimes I'll call him David. We'll refer to him as David here.
David Dicker being the boss of Road and Cars, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he obviously played a massive impact on your life and influencing you to have a racing career.
Yes, until I started beating his times.
I take it he wasn't
a bit weird.
Yeah, I take it he wasn't happy about that.
Yeah. So we were in different categories. But the way that came around was that he was racing the Ferrari Challenge Asian Pacific Series, and he was thinking about the following year doing the European Series. So Ferrari have 3 series. They have the North American Series, the Asian Pacific Series, and the European one. So the Asian Pacific APAC Series would be the weakest competition, I would say. So that's where he started out, and he'd been racing. I mean, he raced Porsche and other things back in the day, but he hadn't raced for like 30 years. And I decided to enter the Ferrari Challenge Series. And I went to watch one of his races, and he was showing me his new cars. And I said, "So where are the other 2 cars?" And he said, "Well, they're in a shed somewhere. I don't know." And I said, "Well, if you've got 2 spare cars, I'm sure I can put them to use." So we made a deal that I could use the 2 cars, and he would pay my entry fee. But Ferrari ended up paying most of the entry fee anyway, because they wanted to encourage women into the Ferrari series.
Yeah.
So it was a really great opportunity for a couple of years for me to do that. And I just got faster and faster. I have all my instructors say I have a real natural talent for the feel of the car. So with the braking, accelerating, cornering, everything. And I don't know much about the car, but I can tell them what it's doing. I don't know why it's doing it, but I can say this is what I feel, and they can make the adjustments to the car. So, I mean, I haven't studied cars and I haven't really, been passionate about cars themselves. I'm just really, really passionate about driving them. And, I'm even at the point now where I need to get on a track and drive a car because it gives me such a buzz. I'm not far from Abu Dhabi at the moment, so could always take a car from the garage and duck down there and have a little spin.
Nice.
But yeah. So my passion's really with driving, and my stepfather helped me get into the APAC series.
Yep.
And Ferrari were very, very supportive. I had my own coach and learned very quickly, made my way up through all of the training to get my license, and then racing was a great experience. I don't have any fear or anything like that. So yeah, that was for a couple of years, and then I got to probably close to the level of my stepfather David, and his support got less and less, and I was like,
Yeah.
do I want to, then I was like, do I really want to spend $1 million a year racing cars and then have nothing? I think I should stop. So basically I stopped because of the cost.
It is an expensive sport, but would you still do it? Would you actually take it up again and keep improving? Because I've looked at some of the videos that you did when you were learning the racecraft, and there's a two-part question in it. Did all of your experience from road cycling, having to read the conditions and having that mental aspect, translate naturally to what you were doing racing a car? And what would you race again if you had the opportunity to do so?
I think I'd start with the Ferrari Challenge Series, just to get a feeling again in the same car, same tracks, same coaches and stuff like that. I would start a year in Ferrari Series and just see where things go from there. I think the transformation from road cycling to driving is not so close. And I say that, just for one example is, when you come out of a corner in cycling, you stamp and stomp as hard as you possibly can on that pedal. In a race car, you have to squeeze, really squeeze. You can't just plant your foot down. So there's, I guess, the same with braking. I mean, when you brake in a car, you got to brake 100%. If you don't brake 100%, you're in big, big trouble.
Yes.
If you do that on a bike, you're just going to lose your back wheels. So there's a few things that are quite different about riding, and that you have to adapt to. When I come out of a corner of a car, I just want to put my foot down. But you've really got, you've got to have that art. Steering's completely different. Needs to be, in relation to the acceleration, and so it is quite different. But I think my talent for that probably comes from being in a car with my brothers and even chasing them and trying to keep up with them from a very young age on private properties.
If you had a choice of a category you'd like to race, I know you would like to do the Ferrari series, but like if you got to a skill that you could really challenge, like say in a long distance race, for example, what event would you like to do and what track? Like, would you say do a Bathurst 12-hour or say the Dubai 24-hour or something like that, like a GT type of race?
Both of those would be very interesting to me. I mean, I watched Bathurst this year and thought they were absolutely crazy, nuts, But that's the kind of adrenaline and the edge that I need to be on to really enjoy myself. So I think the Bathurst 12-hour could be something that I could strive and aim to do. I'm quite old, so maybe I'm past that.
Oh, but, don't say that. You could still do the 6-hour if you wanted to, the production car race at Easter. That's achievable.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the endurance. I'm still getting, it's weird for women. I mean, between the age of 40, 48, you can still increase your endurance, which is really good because you can choose endurance sports. And I don't know technically if I can pick that kind of stuff up to the highest level, but I just love driving. So, and like I said, I do things 100%. When I was doing the Ferrari thing, I was so into the visualization and the concentration, and and everything about it.
Your stepfather has now made quite a name for himself in recent years with the road and car business, which is based in New Zealand and is now making headlines around the world. Not just owning a race team, they've bought out the Carlin team. The Carlin owners are still involved, but now David owns the Carlin team and it's known as Road and Carlin. But he's now making a very serious investment in open wheelers. He's got his own track car, like F1 inspired track car, which is derived from the Lotus project from the back in the 2010s, and he's now also making a very serious effort to Formula One. It's a massive, massive undertaking that he's taken on.
Yeah, I think this hasn't come out of nowhere, because since I've known him since I was 13 years old, cars has just been his passion. Owning a Formula One team, he had to work pretty hard in his IT business to make enough money to put himself into a position to be able to do what he's doing in New Zealand. So his passion from the start, since I knew him, was to build the fastest track car in the world. And he is on that project now with the funds to be able to do it. It's called the F-Zero. So he had the opportunity to develop the Lotus into the FZ. So that car's on the market. Really nice car to drive, so I can vouch for that.
And it looks beautiful. You've actually driven it, have you?
Yeah, and easy to maintain. I go to New Zealand, I jump in it and do some laps and stay there for a week. So it's it's a really nice car. The FZ, the modifications that he's made to it, easy to drive, easy to maintain, just a really nice car. But his ultimate goal is to firstly finish the F-Zero, which is very, very, very close to lapping faster than any other car on the track in the world, faster than F1, faster than any car. So when he succeeds with that, and I think it will be in the next 12 months, that'll be another box ticked for him. He's got a lot of other projects going on that he hasn't publicly announced yet, but he has spoken about, his bid for a place in F1, and he'll go 100% for that, 100%. He wants to have his own F1 team, so that's been a big dream of his, and we'll see what happens there. He has said in a few interviews that he's not so confident that he'll get a license, but he's certainly putting a lot of money and effort into trying to get an F1 team and to have Jamie Chadwick, a female driver, in the series.
Jamie's done a fantastic job in the W Series, a 3-time champion in that, and I've witnessed her talent in the last few years. Like, she's really gone well over and above some of the other talent, and not discrediting any of them because they're all very, very talented. But Jamie's just had this little bit of a knack for that. She's just gone much further than anyone else has, and the fact that she's won back-to-back W Series titles and is now doing Indy Lights with the hope of potentially racing IndyCar or Formula One, she's got the talent to be there. She's very, very good.
Yeah, I think in the women's side of things, she's definitely a level ahead of anyone else. Is she good enough to drive in F1? I think she's going to struggle, but we need to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
We need to have a woman in F1. If she finishes last in every single race, so be it. But you have to start somewhere. And if Roden is willing to put a woman in a place in a F1 team, I think that's something quite special.
This is the Motor Dream Podcast.
You obviously have a passion for cars. I want to learn a little bit more. Obviously, you love driving, but I want to know things like the simple things that make a car enthusiast tick. First and foremost, what was the first car that you drove when you grew up?
VK Commodore 85 model.
Oh, nice. That's actually one of my favourite model Commodores, that and the VL.
My brothers and I put our pocket money together. I think we paid about $1,500 for it.
Yeah.
And my older brother, who's a panel beater, he ended up, because I was going overseas when I was 15, 16, he ended up doing after work loads and loads of work on it. He ended up selling it for $25,000.
Oh.
So he's a panel beater by trade, and he just hotted it up. He put a bonnet skip on it and he put the wings on it. He had this
No.
nice pearl purple color and he did the interior and everything. And yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, I got my $1,500 back, but he made some good money on that one.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
jealous. I'm absolutely jealous. What
Yeah.
about the first road trip you remember going on? Do you remember where you went?
I went to, I took a bus trip over to WA across the Nullarbor, but
Yeah.
road trip did every single weekend. So the first one, no, I can't really remember in the car, but
Well, what was the most
we
memorable road trip that you can recall?
we had this yellow Ford that we used to call the Gugmobile because it was just go 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 all the time.
A bit of a play on
And
a bit of a play on the old Gogglemobile.
no air conditioning,
Oh,
the
yeah,
old wind out
yep.
windows and blah, blah, blah. And the three of us in the back and just coming up with all the games that we would play, I Spy, and then try and sing songs because the radio doesn't work. And then, we had a good trip. I don't know where we went, maybe to Alice Springs or somewhere for a BMX race.
Yeah.
But we had some good old trips in that car.
Amazing, yeah. I've had similar trips like that, where the car didn't have proper air conditioning or didn't have a working radio, and you had to do those things like sing in the car and that. Yeah, I can remember those. They're really cool. Actually, I remember did some of those when we went to a couple of friends of mine and I went to places like Amaroo Park and Oran Park, both of which are no longer around, sadly. But going to like the touring car rounds and that, and they were great
And
times.
you remember the old bike racks? Trying to fit 3 BMX bikes on the back of the car.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were fun times, and also you could ride in the boot or ride in the if it was a wagon you could ride in the back and
you could sit in the back.
Exactly, and you can't do that now. You'd be in a lot of trouble if you did that. What about your driving license? Did you get that first go, or did you have to do a couple of attempts?
I was so confident that I absolutely nailed that first test that I did.
Yeah.
And when my driving instructor came back and said, "You failed," I was like, "What?" And he said, "Did you see the person step off the middle of the roundabout?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, when you're going around the roundabout, a guy stepped off the inside of the roundabout." And I said, "Yeah, but he can't do that." And he said, a motorist always has to give way to a pedestrian that steps onto the road." And I was like, well, I didn't know that rule. You didn't teach me that. So I failed.
Ooh.
Second attempt, I got my driver's license.
I'm the same.
Yeah,
Actually,
I was so nervous about the, reverse park and all these other things. And then you fail because of something you don't even know about.
Can I tell you, I've never told this in a public forum. The funny way I failed my first license test, I laugh now, I put the wrong key into the ignition of the instructor's car. So it was it fitted, but I couldn't turn it and I couldn't get the key out of the ignition. I don't know what key I put in or whatever, but like it went into the barrel and everything and I couldn't turn it over and I'm thinking, what have I done? And I couldn't take it out. And we had to.
That's a very strange thing to fail.
I know.
They failed you for that.
Oh, they did because we had to abort because we couldn't get it going. I felt so ridiculously stupid. It was like, I
can't believe they failed you for that. That's not a driving mistake.
Yeah, that was a human error. That was human error.
Yeah.
Anyway, we tried again about 6 weeks later, and a few days before I turned 18, and I passed, so I was fine. So that's embarrassing, but you laugh about it now. You laugh about it.
Yeah.
Who taught you how to drive?
My two brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they good instructors? Were they good instructors?
Yes, they were. They were very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
My driving instructor, I felt was a little bit too complacent and I didn't feel very comfortable with, but my brothers who taught me to drive when I was around 9 or 10 years of age, they wanted me to be good. They wanted me to be good at everything. So, I think I struggled a little bit with the clutch for quite a while until I really got the feel of it. And obviously the different cars are a bit different, so they had to put me in a few different cars
Nice.
to fill the different clutches.
What do you
But
prefer? What do you prefer, auto or manual?
manual for sure.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Same. Can't. I drive around
100%.
in an auto at the moment, and it's a hybrid. But I've got an XR5, a Ford Focus XR5, which I'm turning into a track car, and I love love the manual aspect. 6 speeds, turbo, 5-cylinder. Oh, it just goes. I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the foot clutch. Obviously, all the racing I did was with the paddle shifts,
Yeah.
and that's cool as well.
Mm.
But if I'm driving on the road, I much prefer to have, especially I do most of my driving in Europe, and you really need to get in and out of intersections quickly. So yeah, I prefer to have a manual.
Yeah, the Europe, there's a lot more manual cars than there are autos. So
Yeah.
I just find now they're becoming a bit more of a lost art, and we tend to forget that people can learn how to drive and drive properly. It's just they choose to just get into an auto and just drive. I don't find that enjoyable driving at all.
Yeah, it's interesting in Italy. It was probably 10, 15 years ago. I went shopping to buy a car with my mum, and she really wanted the little 500 mini thing.
Like the Fiat
and they
500?
don't sell it in it.
The Fiat 500?
Yeah, I think so. Well, they didn't sell it in an auto, and she wanted an automatic.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had to end up buying her a Suzuki Swift. She's only driven a couple of times, but she drives down the mountain like this, squeezing. I'm like, Mum, that's not going to help, because the roads are so narrow that the two cars don't fit.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's quite difficult, especially in the mountains, to buy an automatic car.
All right. What about pet peeves, like car fad pet peeves? Do you have like stickers on your car, or do you swear off having stickers on the car because they're just like a big no-no? Or what about like air fresheners?
Okay, any air fresheners, no way. Any stickers on the outside of the car or the windows is a no-go, 100%.
Right.
I mean, I really would like a nice design with flames and all this kind of stuff painted on the car, and pearly colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But these stickers on the window and stuff, no way. Bumper stickers, no. And one of my peeves, I think, is cuts in the seats or old seat covers. Seat covers I don't like, because some people try to do their car up and put a sports seat cover on to make it a bit sporty. No.
You don't like seat covers at all. I feel the same. I feel the same. Just leave them alone. If you want to, and if the car's if the seats are a bit tattered, get them repaired. It's easily done. Go and pay someone to fix it. So,
yeah.
What about the weirdest thing that's in your car right now?
Oh, I can't tell you what's in my car because I'm in Dubai and my car's in Australia with a friend. But
okay.
I can guarantee you there's baby seats in the back, and I don't have any babies.
I figured that. Well, that is the weirdest thing. It's your car, but someone else is using it, and they've got baby seats. Or what is your current drive at the moment?
When I get home and I call up to ask for the car, I say, you have to get the baby seats out. I'm coming to pick up my car. Taxi's bringing me there. So, yeah.
What is the car that you got at the moment back home?
Well, I've got a couple, but the car that I'm talking about is a van, so I can throw my bike straight in when I get back from the airport.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. But in the garage, I've got a Honda Type R, which is a really fun car to drive.
They are cool.
Yeah.
The Civic Type R's, they're cool.
Yeah, yeah. A Range Rover and a Nissan, a really old but bought brand new Nissan 350Z. So it's still in perfect condition. Thought about upgrading to the 370, but it's not a car I love. It's just a car that I got at the time, and it's been only driven by me, and it just sits there. So it's like an extra car.
That is cool. That is a genuine like low-K 350Z. Can you imagine how much people? Yeah, if you sold it now, can you imagine the money that you get for it from a Z enthusiast? You'd be getting a lot of money for it.
Yeah. Well, it's just sitting there.
No?
And then in Europe, In Europe, all of my cars are the new hybrid CRV from Honda.
You've got a good
So
relationship with Honda, haven't you? Because you obviously from your
yeah,
cycling career, they sponsored you for many years, and they sponsored the team that you managed as well after you retired from
yeah.
racing. You must be very lucky that you've had that great relationship with Honda over the years.
Yeah, over 20 years with Honda, so they've been very supportive. So if I come back to Sydney or if I'm flying into Melbourne, I just need to give them 48 hours notice and they'll have a car at the airport ready for me. So they're completely different divisions actually. My sponsorship's with Honda Motor Europe, and they've been really, really. So it started with Honda Australia, and then I proposed to Honda Motor Europe, and they sponsored me personally, and then they sponsored all of my cycling teams. And now they I'm like an ambassador for Honda. So if and when I can have one in the driveway, they're
Yeah.
happy.
Fantastic. If you call them up, say, if you're coming back home, say, tomorrow, and you called Honda Australia up and you said, I want to drive the TCR Civic Type R, the one that races in the TCR series, would you jump at the chance to drive that TCR car just to sort of, have a bit of fun and learn the ropes of driving a car, like with paddle shift and front wheel drive, or do you just like your Ferraris a bit more?
Well, the thing is that I have full access to all the 3 tracks in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So if I'm going and 100 different cars, so if I want to drive, that's where I end up. Yeah, it's and I can't even put my Type R on the track because it's a road car,
Yeah.
and it'd be null and void of insurance. So I've never had that car on the track.
Okay.
But that would be fun.
It would be a lot of fun to do. One more thing before we get on to the real reason why I have you on the show. Eating in cars. Are you for it or against it?
Well, I'm for it for myself because I'm a nice tidy eater, and if I drop something, I'll make sure I pick it up and clean it up. But I'm not sure I'd be happy with a friend having 3 kids in the back having McDonald's. No, you do know what? When I have kids in the car or other people in the car, it's generally not my car.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with it. Like I take my brother's kids to some sports and stuff, and we'll go through McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it's just all everywhere. But as soon as we stop, I'll ask them to get everything out of the back and throw it in the bin. So
set an example.
Eating in cars, put the windows down a bit, let the smell out. But no, I don't think I've ever told somebody they can't eat in the car. No, I've told my mum she can't smoke in some of my cars, but that didn't work out too well. She ended up opening the door and said, "Oh, if I can't smoke, I'm jumping out." And I'm like, "No, I'll just stop. And we're on the way to the airport, then we're going to miss the flight." So in the end, she gets to smoke in the car.
Oh, yeah. I don't.
No, I'm definitely.
Smoking's a big no for me. Smoking's a massive no. I've only allowed it once. My father, years ago, he was dealing with a bit of grief, and he just had to light up. And he knows he's long since passed, but when he lit up in the car, I just had to open every window because I just just can't. I just can't let it.
You still can. You can never get the smell out. Once it's there, it's there.
Exactly. You try everything that you can, but you just can't get it out. It's a bugbear of mine, a constant bugbear. All right, Rochelle Gilmore, this is the reason why we got you on the podcast. One day you wake up and you check your phone, as everyone does when they wake up in the morning, and it says, please check your bank balance. And you think, why? What's going on here? So you open the bank balance on your phone, the bank app on your phone, and it says that your balance has gone to Elon Musk levels. You're now a billionaire, and you fall off your chair, literally think, what the hell's going on here? And then you get an email from your mystery benefactor. You don't know who it is, but it tells you that you can buy anything you like. You can buy any car, bike, or machine you want, but the caveat is you're only allowed 3 in your dream garage. So, with that in mind, what is the first machine that you would like to have in your dream garage, Rochelle Gilmore?
You know what, this question for me, it's not really so much about the money, it's about the enjoyment of which cars
Yeah.
I like to drive.
Yeah.
First of all, I think I'd take 2 track cars and 1 road car. Now, first car is quite a cheap car, but it's fun. And I could let my friends drive it, and it's just really fun.
Yeah.
It's the Lotus 340R.
Ooh.
Do you know that car?
I've heard of it.
I have it.
I'm
This
just going
one's a track car.
I look at it. I'm looking at it now. 340R. And I love the current model Lotuses. Like, they look fantastic. And I'm just looking at it now. Wow, I love it. It just reminds me of the Lotus Type 7. Like, oh, it's just beautiful.
It's a little bit like a go-kart to me.
Yeah.
You feel like your bottom's like really rubbing against the ground. It's so low. And you can let young children drive it as well if you've got private tracks and property.
Yeah.
But it's a fun car, it's just really fun for people to just go around the track, learn to drive.
That's really cool.
Yeah. The second one would be a track car. At the extreme other end, the Ferrari FXX.
Oh, I
Evo.
love that car because that went around the Top Gear test track and whipped everyone else's cars off the power chart, like the lap record. I think it did a 1:10 with the Stig behind it, and it got taken down because it didn't. The rules state at the time. I remember this. It was only eligible to go on the leaderboard if it could go over a speed hump. Like, it had to have that road car ability that you could drive it over a speed hump. I can't remember what the other requirement was, but it had to be like a roadworthy kind of car. Like, you could just drive it over a speed hump, and it would do it with ease. And it was so cool.
Well, I haven't had the privilege of driving one, but I definitely feel like in the Ferrari Challenge 488 Evo that sometimes I'm giving it everything I possibly can. If I can get a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more speed, I'd be really happy. So that would be my second car choice.
Before we go on, I want to paint a bit of a difference between the Lotus 340R and the Ferrari FXX. Now, the Lotus 340 was built in 2000, and it was built when Lotus was under British ownership at the time. Actually, no, I think it was under Proton ownership at the time, but it was based still in England. It was released as a concept car in the '98 Birmingham Motor Show, and it was road legal in the UK and Europe, but most of the cars are now used for track use, demonstrations, or for racing. It was powered by a 1.8 litre Rover 4-cylinder motor, so it was a K-series motor, and it produced about 132 kilowatts or 177 brake horsepower. And it got up to a top speed of 214 kilometres an hour, which doesn't sound much, but when you think of the power-to-weight ratio, and as you said, feeling like it was like a little go-kart, it's very light. It's very light, and the power-to-weight ratio was pretty impressive when you have a look at it. It's just incredible. And like 0 to 160 or 100 miles an hour, 10.7 seconds. And the power-to-weight ratio was 252 brake horsepower per tonne, or that's like almost 4 kilos per tonne. I mean, that is just staggering figures. And then you look at the Ferrari FXX. If you bought one, you actually couldn't physically take it home with you. Ferrari still kept the car, and only 30 of them were ever made, and they would maintain the car, and they would take it to a track day of your choice, and you would be able to drive around it with all the Ferrari technicians and the like, looking after the car for you. That. Yeah, that is exactly what, it was a development prototype track day car. Oh, like 6.3 litre V12 with the paddle shifts on. Oh, it's just beautiful.
And only 2.6 million, which I think is pretty reasonable for such a nice car.
Oh, and it is a very beautiful car.
And it looks fantastic. It comes with all those services. I mean, it makes life easier.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, if you have it based at Maranello and you want to go to one of the tracks there and they're going to take it there for you, easy. Great.
I could actually see you driving one of those. If you had the opportunity to drive one, I think you would do it. You would just actually adapt.
I think I actually will. I think I will actually get the opportunity to drive one. If I start now asking around a Ferrari, maybe use my dad as a little bit of a way in.
You know,
may-
I know David is a Ferrari enthusiast, so he has a lot of Ferraris in his collection. So I'm pretty sure that you can twist his arm a little bit to try and get yourself into a Ferrari FXX.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. I'll put that on my to-do list.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to hold you to that.
Now,
Now the third car.
my road car.
Yes.
Not very practical, but it's just from the very first time I saw it was actually just in a pit shed at a race somewhere that we went, and thought it was very ugly the first time I looked at it because it's got a really long, round, really way too long rear vision mirrors, and it looked like they just shouldn't be there. Anyway, it's the LaFerrari.
The LaFerrari.
LaFerrari.
Oh, I'm just having a look now.
It's a road car, and it looks beautiful except for the rear vision mirrors.
Actually, no, I can see.
Sure.
Yes, I can actually see why. So it's the LaFerrari Aperta. So or LaFerrari Aperta. So, okay, this is actually does look nice. It does, like the front end is very chiseled, I got to say. And you're right about the rear vision mirrors, like the wing mirrors. They do look very long.
Are you looking at the Aperto? Is that a convertible?
No, I think it's the I'm not
No,
sure.
because it's not a convertible.
It's
that
not a
I
convertible.
want, but,
Oh no, the Aperta is the open top version. The closed roof one is the LaFerrari. Yeah. So,
yeah.
just looking at the figures here. So it's a 2-door coupe, and the Aperta is the targa top one, the open top one. So it's based off the Ferrari FXX. So it does have a lineage to the FXX itself. 6.3 litre V12 motor, and it does have a hybrid in it. It's got an electric motor with KERS as well, so it's obviously all that technology from Ferrari's efforts in Formula One. 7-speed dual clutch automatic, and it produces 950 brake horsepower. That's 708 kilowatts. That's just staggering when you consider that you've got a hybrid motor in there as well, and it just actually looks. I got to say, I actually like it. I do agree, though. I don't like the wing mirrors on the car. They just look so out of place.
Out of place, yes. But I can live with that.
I could live with that as well. Yeah.
There was a really, really long lineup of beautiful cars, and I just stood there and looked at this red LaFerrari, and I was like, yeah, I like that one.
And you'd be okay with it, and you'd be okay with that being a hybrid car as well.
My road car.
Your road car. Wow.
Yeah, I prefer it not to be a hybrid, but
yeah, I mean, I don't mind hybrids, but there's something about a traditional internal combustion engine, that you can work on it and, do it up and just, give it a good rev and a good fang and just have fun. Just driving. That's I mean, I know at some point we're all going to be driving around in electrics, and it's going to feel weird when you're not going to be able to hear the engine noise. But I think that's what I love about cars. It's the engine, it's the sound, it's the smell, the noise.
Sound. Once the sound's gone, we're gonna lose a lot of enjoyment when sound's gone.
Absolutely, I agree with that, and I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't think I'm ready for the.
I'm definitely not ready for it.
I don't think I could cope if I was to drive around without any engine noise. It's like, what am I going to do? Like, I mean, music.
But if I think back to the days of my brothers on their cars and stuff, I would have been out of place if I couldn't smell petrol.
Yeah.
It's just these smells and sounds, and I just watch them. They'd spin in the back wheels till they blew a diff every second afternoon, and it'd be just like, why did you do that? that's called fun.
It's called fun, and learning how to look after a car and driving into it broke. Yeah, I think we've all been there, and smelling the smell of burnt oil and blowing up air. It's all part of the learning experience of loving cars. It's a great joy to have, and it would be a very sad day, I think, if we didn't have that joy anymore. Having that. Yeah, the smell and noise of an engine. That's what makes it so enjoyable and exciting. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, me too.
Rochelle, I love the list. Like two Ferraris.
It's a weird list.
It's a weird list, but I love it. Like, I love the fact that the LaFerrari, it's just, I love the chisel nose on it. and it looks really, really cool. The Ferrari FSX, I just love already because I've seen the car in the flesh on TV, and I know it's not the real thing, but we've seen how fast it is. It's an insane car, and particularly when it's in jet black and it's all carbon fiber, it's just like,
Oh,
it just
it'd have to be jet black and carbon fiber.
oh yeah,
It's yeah, for me, I just love G-forces.
yeah,
A couple of weeks ago, I went skydiving over Mount Everest,
yeah,
and I was tandem, so I was on the front of the guy, and I said, once we pulled the chute, I said, I need some more G's. Seriously, I said, can't you flip this thing? And he just did his hardest, and I said, yeah. And then we got some of that kind of zero gravity feeling as well, and
yeah.
I need G-forces, and I mean,
I love
I'm not
it.
ready to drive Formula.
I love that feeling when you're doing like if you're in a passenger in a like a race car and you're doing a hot lap and you get that feeling you're about to fall out of the chair and then you feel the speed. It took me a while to get used to it, but I love it. And even when I drive fast, I just I haven't done it for a while, but when I do a track day, I get great joy out of actually driving the car and going as fast as I can and just pushing my limits whilst having fun. And I love doing that. So maybe one day you and I can actually go for a race together and see who's the better talented person.
Faster?
I think you'd be faster than me, but I'd like to have that challenge. So
My issue is that I have no fear. So
I've got no fear at all. So
okay,
I'd
good.
say bring it on. Bring it on, I say.
Yeah.
Rochelle,
We'll end up on the grass.
Probably will, but if we can laugh about it afterwards, I'm all for it. So it's been a great chat. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Congratulations once again on conquering Mount Everest. It's, not
Yes.
many people get to do that in their lifetime, and you're one of the very, select group of people that have managed to conquer the Everest summit and come back alive and live to tell the tale. And I know no matter what you do moving forward, you're going to throw yourself 100% into it and you're going to be successful at it. So if you do race again, I can't wait to see it happen. So thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure to
The
chat.
possibility. You've got me all motivated now.
I do, and I can't wait to see it. I'm challenging you to go and do Bathurst. I think Bathurst would be the great goal for you.
Bathurst.
Do it.
Oh, yeah, that's scary.
It's actually a cool place. It's a cool place. I think you would excel.
I've raced Bathurst quite a few times, but on a bicycle.
And that
around
Mount Panorama. Yeah, it doesn't probably on a bike. It doesn't feel as scary, but in a car, at full speed. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's a different story altogether.
I'll do some hot laps first as passenger, and see how I like being that close to the wall, and then go from there.
Well, I'm challenging you to it, so I'm going to hold you to it when we catch up next. Thank you again.
Okay.
It's a great pleasure to have a chat with you, and I hope we can do it again in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Connor. I really enjoyed the interview. It's been great. And I wish you all the best. And hope we get lots of viewers on our new podcast. And thanks again for inviting me.
Rochelle is one dedicated woman who doesn't do things by halves. Could we see her tackle some of the world's best racetracks in the future? Well, if Rochelle has her way, she'll apply herself with as much passion to her craft just as much as she did to her cycling career. Also, her association with Con Taparis was rather touching. I was quite surprised also that she was unaware of Con's previous life competing in Formula Ford back in the mid-1990s. But given that motorsport is in the family bloodlines, one hopes that Costa will keep his father's legacy burning bright as he makes his mark on the road to Formula One. For the record, Costa finished his debut season in GB3 in 15th position in a highly competitive field won by British driver Callum Voisin. And since the recording of this interview, Rodin's bid to enter Formula One was unsuccessful, with the FIA awarding the 11th Formula One team licence to the Andretti Autosport General Motors bid for 2026. That is, of course, still subject to approval by the 10 teams currently competing in Formula One. But that, of course, is another story. You can follow Rochelle on Twitter and Instagram with the handle Rochelle Gilmore, as well as checking out her website at rochellegilmore.com. Speaking of which, head to the Motor Dream podcast website at themotordream.com.au, and that is where you can find all previous episodes as well as show information and links to our channels on social media. By the way, you can check them out with the handle The Motor Dream, which is also the hashtag. And make sure you like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave some feedback, be it a quirky car question or a guest suggestion. And make sure you spread the word, because that's how we get new listeners to this little podcast. As we close out 2023, I would like to say that I've enjoyed every little moment of this podcast journey so far. The feedback that I've received through messages and comments on our socials has been very heartwarming, so thank you very much. And I'm pleased to say that there's more to come in 2024 as we continue this first series. So thank you for listening, and for now, have a safe festive season, and please, whatever you do, please take extra care on the roads. See you in 2024.
Thanks for listening to the Motor Dream podcast. This series is proudly produced by Beast Productions.